Howdy. Hey, folks. If you don't know who I am, my name is David Tittel, and I'm the founder and director at Linkmate. We are a social enterprise devoted to proactive emotional support, and we believe that everyone should have a mate to turn to in times of need. So, today, I want to share my experience of conflict in my relationship at college, at uni, and what I've learned from it in the hope that it might help you feel a little less alone if you're going through something similar, and also better prepared with how to deal with the challenges that come with relationships, in this case, romantic or intimate relationships. Because it's not a matter of if those challenges come up, but when and how you respond to them, which is really, really important. And by the end of this video, you'll have more confidence and knowledge and understanding of how to respond effectively, meaningfully, collaboratively with your partner to address and overcome these challenges together. So, when I started at college, living on campus at uni, I was already in a relationship with my high school sweetheart. We both started and were enrolled at the same uni, both living at different colleges. And, from all accounts, it was a wonderful relationship. We spent a lot of time with one another. We learned from one another and we grew together. But all throughout this experience, I was struggling a lot. My parents had just divorced. I was dealing with the pressure of exams and to do well and get good grades and get into the job that I thought I wanted at the time, but it was really something that I wanted for others. But that's a story for another video. And I was just feeling incredibly lonely, and I didn't really know how to talk about these challenges and who to talk to. So I very much leaned on my partner at the time. And I was quite shy, introverted, and living at college, it's a hyper social environment. There's always stuff going on, people everywhere that you eat with, sleep adjacent to, and party with as well. And it was just a lot for me to adjust to. So I'm grateful that I had my partner at the time when I was struggling, but it did feel like I was quite dependent on her for support and quite reliant on her presence. And there was a need to be with her so I wouldn't feel alone. And I realized now that that's a big no-no, because I was uh, effectively using her as a crutch, I think, which isn't fair on her, and it wasn't fair on me, because I didn't spend enough time trying to work through my emotions independently. Um, so I spent more and more time with her to fill the gap in my life, and really disengaged from uni, from college, all of the events and initiatives and activities and parties were all happening around me, and I just didn't get involved in any of them. As a result, I was labeled a dark sider by my peers, which, for those who don't know, is a term that was used to refer to those who were isolated and spent all of their time alone in their room at college, because I wouldn't go to meals. I would buy meals from the supermarket or from 7-Eleven, and then I would keep them in my fridge in my room. And I had a microwave, and I would pretty much just be a hermit. And being called a dark sider by everyone at college hurt a lot. It was painful to be identified as someone like that, as a hermit, as someone isolated. Um, and it was quite, it was devastating, really, because that's not how I wanted to be seen and to be acknowledged. So when I got to the end of my second year, at college, I realized I just missed out on all of the fun and all of the joy and the memorable experiences of college and the culture there. So I started to change because I didn't want to end my time at college with regrets. So I started prioritizing making new friends and engaging with all the events and the initiatives. And I, took rowing very seriously and jumped into the tech committee and ran a bunch of events and played music at the parties. But all throughout this, transition, I didn't communicate this change effectively to my partner. I didn't articulate my expectations of her from the relationship. And I didn't spend enough time with her trying to understand and apply the expectations that she wanted of me from the relationship. And so, there were nights where I would just, go out and hang out with new friends and try and nurture those relationships that I'd created, but at the expense of time that I used to spend with my partner, and that hurt her. It hurt me, and I ended the relationship as a result, because I figured it wasn't fair and my priorities had shifted, and it was incredibly heart wrenching for me. It was crushing, juggling everything, all the studies, the part time job, the social life at college, and a committed relationship was too much for me to bear, and I, you know, I dropped one, and it was crushed me. Um, and that hole of loneliness was still somewhat there. In fact, it was amplified now. I did have some friends at college that I had made as a result, but I was still struggling a lot without having her by my side. And so as a result, I developed a crippling drug and alcohol addiction to cope. And it just, I don't have to tell you, that's awful and very unproductive and toxic. It wasn't sustainable. And, it wasn't until I, sort of started opening up to my friends about what I was going through, to my dad, to the right psychologist after some trial and error in trying to connect with the right one, that I developed a really strong support network to deal with it, to, meaningfully grieve the loss of that relationship and move on as a more independent and fulfilled human. But that took a long time. It took a really really long time, and so I want to share some lessons with you here that I've picked up along the way, because relationships at college are plenty. There's you meet so many people, and you're around so many people every day, and you develop rapport and you develop feelings, and you start to cultivate some romance. And with everything else that's going on in your life, it can be difficult to ensure that you're giving your relationships and everything else on your plate the time and energy that it deserves. And I don't want you to have to uh, get to a point where you're neglecting a relationship and ending it, and leaving both parties in heartbreak. If that's the right decision for you, then for sure, I mean, go for it. But I do believe that with the appropriate tools and techniques and frameworks in place, you can uh, comfortably, comfortably and confidently manage everything and ensure that you have a really flourishing and thriving relationship. So, the first lesson I want to share is that relationships, I believe, should be a coming together of two independent people who have found their own fulfillment and purpose and happiness, and then share that with one another and share their love with one another. But I wasn't doing this. I wasn't happy. I wasn't fulfilled. I didn't have purpose. And so I leaned on my relationship, my partner, as a crutch to support me through that. And that's not fair on anyone. As I said, partners shouldn't be whilst they can be a really great support network, they shouldn't be the sole supporter in your life, and they shouldn't be someone that you depend upon to live your life. Because it felt like I was depending on this one person to survive, and that's not fair on their mental health. And it's an injustice to yourself because you haven't given and honored yourself to work on what you're going through with the support of that person. So, as I said, I should have spent more time working through these difficult emotions, seeking the right support, processing my trauma, as opposed to, rigidly leaning on and depending on my partner all the time. So, the second lesson I want to share with you is set healthy boundaries, establish expectations, and then honor those boundaries and expectations. As a very emotionally immature kid, I didn't do this. I was infatuated and just running high on the emotions of love. But a relationship requires a mutual understanding between both parties, between both people, of what you want from one another. I believe, and this is what I've learned. And using my story as an example, running off and jumping into fancy new shiny things without communicating this effectively and understanding what my partner wanted from me at the time was incredibly just unfair and unreasonable, and just lacked self-awareness and empathy. So when you develop empathy in your relationship and you display care for someone, you do this effectively by seeking to understand what they want out of the relationship. So I should have made a concerted effort to understand how my partner wanted to engage with me, and to establish, how we could work together to ensure that I could still have, a fun social life, and also time for studies, and also time for her. So these healthy boundaries are important to set, because otherwise, um, there's no structure, and there's no trust, and there's no accountability. So at Linkmate, we have 3 steps to setting healthy boundaries. And the first one is define what that boundary is. And it could be as simple as saying, look, I have an event on Friday, and it goes from 6 till 12, whatever. So I'm gonna go to this and check in. How does that sound? Would that be all right? And communicate that effectively. Communicate is the second step. Articulate what you're going to do, and articulate it clearly, and ensure that you're checking in to make sure that your partner has understood, or your friend, or whoever you're in this relationship with. And then establish that boundary. So once you've come to an agreement, if there's any uncertainty, or if your partner's questioning this other commitment that you have, it's important to establish it. Like, look, we talked about this, you said this, and we have agreed that we'll catch up on Saturday, or whatever it might be. So define, communicate, establish, really important. And also, once you've set your own healthy boundary, ask them to share with you what healthy boundaries they might have. I think over time, relationships become effortless, and they should become effortless, because you've already put in that important groundwork, and you have developed trust and love and accountability, and that starts by creating these healthy boundaries. But it is a two-way thing. It shouldn't just be you. You have set your own healthy boundary and you're honoring it. And you should also honor the healthy boundary that your partner sets as well. So make sure that, it's a two-way conversation and that you get to both hear each other out and hold space so that, everyone's emotions are acknowledged and accepted and dealt with appropriately. So, yeah, thank you again for watching. I appreciate you holding space for me as I share this story and just listening and just, processing all of this. Relationships can be really difficult, and especially when you're in a hyper social environment like college or uni. There's a lot of people around. There might be some gossip and rumor thrown in, which can make things even more difficult. But the most effective way that you can deal with all of that to establish a mutual understanding with you and your partner based on love and trust and accountability is to initially work on yourself, as we said. Work on yourself and get to a point where you're feeling fulfilled and happy. And then ensure that you're supporting your partner in getting to that stage as well. So you can come together and share that as two thriving, independent people. And second, set those healthy boundaries. So, yeah, again, thanks for sharing your time. Thanks for sharing your energy. It means a lot. And to conclude, I want to say that, all I'm doing here is just sharing my story and what I've learned. None of what I've shared is a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. You should still seek the advice of an appropriately qualified healthcare professional before making any decisions about your own circumstances. And you can also access empathetic social support from a mate over here, there, by scanning that QR code to download the Linkmate app. Linkmate fosters a safe, confidential, friendly environment where you can get support and be heard by someone who is trained in peer support and empathy and active listening and social empowerment. And these mates show up as your own best friend would, and they give you the kind of support that you deserve and need, when you might be feeling off or lonely or a little bit stuck. So you can download the app for free on the App Store and Play Store. Thank you again for listening, and ciao for now.